Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council Chambers. Thank you for those who are in the audience today and the presenters that have weathered part of the storm coming here this evening. Welcome to everybody who's viewing at home as well. Hope everybody's healthy and safe. We'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, March 22nd. The time is 5:30 p.m. We are in the City Council Chambers. Chris, thanks for coming and filling in for our city administrator and city clerk who are at a conference to get recertified and some more credits. So thanks for being here this evening. Chris, would you please take the roll call?
Councillor Baraboo?
Present.
Councillor Friedlieb?
Here.
Councillor Paulson?
Present.
Councillor Beyondich?
Present.
Councillor Johnson?
Here.
Councillor Barnzelli?
Absent.
And Mayor Cuffey.
Present. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We'll move to item 4 on the agenda, which is a public forum. We see have some people in the audience this evening. Is there anybody who would like to speak before the council at this time? This is your opportunity to come and address the council on any subject you deem important to you. Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, which is the consent agenda. The following items will be enacted by one motion unless a councilor or a citizen of the City of Virginia requests that the item be considered separately. Item 5.1 is the approval and corrections of the minutes of the regular meeting that was held on March 8th, 2022. Item 5.2 is the adoption of Finance Resolution number 22-006, the schedule of bills. Item 5.3 is approve pay estimate number 21 to Kraus Anderson for the MEC project in the amount of $7,259.40. Item 5.4 is approve the travel request for Stephanie Wishlas, Public Library, to attend the MILE, the Mile Institute for Leadership Excellence, May 10th through 13th, 2022, at the Sugar Lake Lodge in Cohasset, Minnesota, at a cost of $81.32. Item 5.5, approve the mayor, council, or administrative staff to attend the League of Minnesota Cities 2022 annual conference, which is scheduled for June 22nd through the 24th, 2022 in Duluth, Minnesota, at a cost of $399 per person, plus hotel and mileage. Item 5.5 is approve the 2 a.m. liquor license for the Martini Incorporated, doing business as Tommy's Rainy Lake Saloon and Deli. And finally, item 5.6, approve a 2-day temporary liquor license for the Lyric Center on April 20th and the 21st, 2022. These are the consent agenda items for council action today, and looking for someone from the council to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'd like to pull 5.1 for a correction, please.
Okay, Councilor Johnson has asked to pull 5.1 from the consent agenda for further discussion. We're looking for a motion to approve 5.2 through 5.6. Moved by Councilor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Back to 5.1, the approval correction of the minutes of the regular meeting held on March 8th, 2022. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Page 4 of the packet, which is page 2 of the minutes, line 2 should read Sam Stone, not Sandstone.
Okay.
Pam asked that I bring it up here as well. So it's Sam Stone, the person, not Sandstone, the village.
Okay, we'll make that correction to the minutes. If you'd reflect that, please, Chris, that reflection to be Sam, S-A-M, space S-T-O-N-E, Sam Stone. Thank you, Councilor Johnson.
And I will move approval of 5.1 now.
Councilor Johnson moves the approval of 5.1 with the correction of the name Sam Stone to be reflected in the new minutes. Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Councilor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed, Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, on item 6, appearances. We have 2 scheduled appearances this evening. The first, under item 6.1, is Bradley Gustafson to update us on a downtown project that he has, and we see that Mr. Gustafson is in the audience this evening. Mr. Gustafson, would you please come forward, turn on the microphone to green. Welcome to the City Council, and thanks for being here.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just wanted to give a brief update on our project. I am now understanding why there's so many vacant buildings downtown. It's really hard. With the construction costs the way they are, people buy these buildings with all these dreams, and even with the grants out there, it's still near impossible to do it. So as you can remember, when I first came to present before you, we were going to build 2 buildings with apartment buildings, 2 apartments up above each building. With working with our lender, the second building went cash flow with what we can charge for rent for retail space and apartments. So the second building got wiped from our plans. So we revised our plan to expand our building slightly and have 2 3-bedroom apartments instead of 2 2-bedroom apartments, and then have a private room in our retail space that we'll be building and a bigger patio, which is good. So we're pivoting. Even with the second building or the second floor, the construction cost of that is $1 million. And with what you can charge for rent, again, that went cash flow. So we're pivoting again to eliminate that second floor. We didn't want to be landlords, but we knew that there's a big need for housing, especially in the city of Virginia. So we're moving forward with just the one building with the one floor with our patio, and we're going to construct that in hopes to add on in the future. So we're still moving forward with that. Another reason I'm here is, the business that will be operating in our new building is the Forge Social House. It's going to be a family-friendly environment, lots of games, and our main attraction is going to be axe throwing. So we just launched our Facebook page a few weeks ago, and we'll be at the home show starting on Thursday with our mobile axe throwing unit. So we're launching that now to create interest and buzz. It'll be available for residents to rent, businesses to rent for holiday parties and what have you. So I invite you to stop by our booth at the home show, and everybody listening, we're really excited. We've been working really hard to make this possible, and just want to thank you for all your support. Was there any questions?
I have one question, Mr. Gustafson. Thank you for coming and giving us an update on, the evolving plans that you have for the Main Street. Any new project is exciting and moving forward. And I understand, and I'm that you'll continue to work with our staff, including John Sullivan, with respect to this project. And as things progress, and Mr. Sullivan, who is why we have him here in order to do these kind of things and keeping thumb on the pulse of what's going on, he'll make sure he provides us with any information we need with respect to this. So I would refer to John. Do you have any other information or any other comments you'd like to address tonight on Mr. Gustafson's project?
No, I'm just glad he's here. Good update. It's really tough to with the construction cost climate right now. You might assume your project's going to be, let's say, a $2 million project, and when you're done with your architectural stuff and you do some bid estimates from people that know what they're doing, they'll tell you, this is going to cost $3.5 million, and people are like, whoa, I can't do that. And banks are being the same way because they look at it on an appraisal basis and what can they justify from a loan to value on an appraisal, and it gets really difficult. So both Betsy Olavanti from the Small Business Development Center and myself will continue to work with Brad and Britt and Vita, of course. But we've also been working with the IRRB to see if we can come up with something, as an effective program to bridge this gap, because we're not the only city that's experiencing this. This is going on all over the place. So we've been working with them, and hopefully that'll bring some positives. But for now, we'll continue to work with Brad and, slim the project down a little bit, and hopefully that'll be the result. And if it flies, then we can look at expansion in the future. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, John, very much. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Gustafson from the elected body? Counselor Bearable.
Brad, from my recollection, you bought all 3 lots, right?
That's correct.
Do you have plans in the future then for the 3rd lot, or is that going to be incorporated as part of your major construction?
Potentially. So our original plan was to construct the 2 buildings on the outsides of those 3 lots with the patio space in the middle. So with eliminating that second building, we just made the patio bigger and made our building a little bit bigger. So possibly in the future, we could look at building another building. Like John had mentioned, the appraisal is going to be the biggest hurdle. We're not even there yet. Our original cost for the 2 buildings was $4.1 million. So now with being down to the 1 building, 1 floor, it's going to be just under $2 million. So the bank is trying to look at it from a risk standpoint, and that's how they have to view all development projects. So with eliminating that second floor, we eliminated $1 million off of our construction cost, and I think that will get us to where we need to be. We're just 2 middle-class Iron Range families trying to make this huge investment into our downtown community, and it's hard. And once we're at that finish line, we want to be a resource to anybody else that's looking to invest and create something new downtown.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Counselor Bearable? Very good. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Gustafson.
Thank you.
I'll move to item 6.2 on the agenda, which is Stuart Beauregard from the Rangers Snowmobile and ATV Club, requesting a letter of support for the Minnesota DNR grant. I know that we have sent letters of support before with a bunch of others with no cost to the city, looking for a letter of support so they can get this snowmobile and ATV club trails moving forward through the city of Virginia and connecting throughout the Iron Range area. Mr. Beauregard was unable to be here this evening. I had some discussion with our city administrator early on before she left for her conference, indicated that this is something that's on the agenda for us to discuss. And I'm looking for some council action for the council's letter of support for the Range Snowmobile ATV Club to support the application for a Minnesota DNR grant. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to approve the letter as stated in our packet.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson moves to approve. Is there support?
Counselor Paulson made the motion.
I'm sorry, Councilor Paulson made the motion, and is there support? Support by Councilor Johnson. Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
So I just want to point out that this is way over on the east end of the range, but the idea that, for those of you who don't know, Minnesota Power is creating a sun farm, basically, and they need to move the trail over, and so we are just saying we support this because it'll get people from eastern Minnesota across, and it'll help all of the cities on this end of the range. So it's a great idea, and it demonstrates that how we are all interconnected all year round. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So we have in our audience today Eric Honkinen, legal counsel for the Northern Divide Bar and Eatery, and he's asked to make an appearance before you. I think some information has been disseminated to you as well. So I'm going to ask, unless the council has an objection.
Need to vote.
We need to vote
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So thank you. So unless the elected body has an objection, I'll allow Mr. Konkinen to come forward and speak before the council at this time. Does anybody from the council has an objection to this? Councilor Beyondich.
I would rather, I just got this placed on my desk here right before the meeting, so I would prefer to hold off on this until we have time to go through it.
Yeah, I think the goal and objective is not for us to make any decisions here, but is to allow Mr. Honkin to address the council. No action to be taken. Counselor Johnson.
This is also later on the agenda. I would prefer that we deal with it all together at one time instead of spreading it out through both sides of the meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that we're not wasting Mr. Onkenen's or Mr. Kerrville's time if we're not allowed to allow him to speak. So thank you. We'll move to item number.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think if you're not going to allow him to speak, we need to vote on that as a council. Because I think it's inappropriate in a public sector portion that we can't allow him to speak if he's asked to. We've never done that before to anybody.
Well, I think that the consensus of so far of those who are opposed to having him speak right now is to allow him to speak later on in the agenda. So he'll be
I don't
allowed.
care, let's do it the right way and stuff, or I'm gonna really object to this. And
And what is,
not the procedure we've ever used for 26 years I've been in this council. We've always allowed somebody, if they want to speak in that portion of the agenda, they can speak. We can always move the other part up.
okay? Any comments? Any other comments? Okay, so we are going to be moving to unfinished business, so if we can move them up on the agenda so we don't have to wait till the very end, we can do that, but in the interest of those others who are in attendance right now, we have some unfinished business to discuss. So let's discuss the unfinished business first and then move that item onto the committee reports up. Is that all right with everybody? He's going to be able to speak one way or the other. He should be allowed to speak. Everybody has that opportunity on this council. We never refuse or deny anybody the opportunity to address the council at any time. This is a proper process which to do, but we can wait. You'll have the opportunity to speak, Mr. Honkin and Mr. Kerrville. Thank you. Item 7.1 under unfinished business is the property at 410 5th Street South. You did receive some information, I think, in your packet or separately from your packet, an engineer report and a report from the fire marshal with respect to the property at 410 5th Street South. We did promise Mr. and Mrs. Kingston and other neighbors that if they were, that we would keep them apprised of the reports moving forward. Mr. King and Mrs. Kingston are in the audience this evening. They have been provided those inspection reports because it's a matter of public record. So I'm looking for any information from the council, any questions, comments, or concerns with respect to the inspection reports that you received from both the fire marshal and our city code official. And then we'll move and ask Mr. and Mrs. Kingston if they'd like to respond in any way, shape, or form. So I'll go right to left. First, Councilor Johnson, then Councilor Paulson, and then Councilor Bearable. Councilor Johnson.
Do we have a time frame for these listed repairs? Like, that's one of my huge concerns is that we've gotten a list of this. This is the first time we've gotten a list in writing. But over the last 6 years and over the last 13 years that the Kingsleys have been dealing with this, this is what's happening. They come, we're going to fix this, okay, great, and then nothing happens, and then they disappear. So I didn't see, and I read both letters, but only once because that's all the time I had. But do we have a time frame when these things need to be done before? What's the legal moving forward that we need to do to make sure that this is timely?
Brian, are you able to address that for Councilor Johnson?
I can address it. So there's really two answers. So the first answer is the process that was begun that kind of led to these inspections, that process can continue. And under that process, there is a very specific time frame that is put in place, although that time frame does give a fairly good amount of time. The time frame is 120 days, if I remember it correctly. That being said, given the nature of what's in these reports, there may be some less formal things that we can do to push faster timelines. So as I think to answer the question, an outside timeline of about 120 days, and hopefully we can work to make some more prompt timelines within that.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, we all received the emails from both our fire marshal and our building code official. Are those entered into record anywhere? Because since they're not in our packet tonight, I'd like to have those entered as public record.
Brian, they are part of our file, but go, please, would you please respond?
Thank you, Mayor. So there's a couple of things. They are part of the meeting tonight because we're discussing them, but also they're public data. So technically, any member of the public could make a request and receive a copy.
Okay, and so they would have to actually just reach out to our city clerk and ask for a copy by not having it added to our current packet. It's already available, or do we need to add it to our, no, we don't, okay.
We can provide any public document regardless of whether it's on this agenda or not.
Okay, and then in that breakdown, Brian, 120 days, do we have that in writing, that these duties, or these, everything that was on the list that Christina Nicola had stated? I did not see a time frame on there, but I was reading it quickly. How do we give proper notice that there is this timeline and that's what the expectation is?
Mayor, if I may.
Please, Brian.
Councilor Paulson, the mechanism is essentially a repair order that the council will issue. And the process is that once the council has issued that order, there's a timeline, that 120 days for compliance. If compliance isn't substantially reached within that 120 days, then essentially what we do is file with the court and bring a motion before the court asking the court to give judicial authority to the order that the council issues. And that would allow the council and the city to actually step in and take some action to abate whatever conditions still remain after that period.
Okay, so what formal motion would need to be made then in order for the council to approve that timeline?
The way that the formal mechanism will be, I just received these documents this morning. I wasn't able to get them worked into the resolution and attendant
You'll
order.
draft a resolution?
Correct, and that'll
Okay.
be before the council at the next committee of the whole.
Okay. And I guess I would like to express my frustration, because what it feels like is it's just setting the clock back again. I mean, we give him a task, a list of things that need to be done. Excuse me, he gets them done. And then there's other things that aren't done, and it just keeps falling into disrepair, and it's over the course now of 14 years. I'm very frustrated by this process. And I don't know what else we can do, but again, you're saying that the city, if the 120 days expires without any work being performed, then the city basically could go to a court, get awarded, that the city could go in and make those repairs. And I don't think, and I said it before, I don't think the city should be going in and making any repairs to any personal property. At that point, if they can't do what's needed to be done, I think there should have been according to Christina's report, it is not in condemnation, in disrepair enough to be to facilitate a condemnation proceeding, as well as the fire marshal. But at what point do we say, it hasn't been habitated, it hasn't been fixed, we keep giving him the list, little things get done, but nothing is fulfilled, and I'm very frustrated, and I don't know what else we can do, but we owe it not only to the Kingsleys, to the other neighbors, but we owe it, there's been other properties that we've been able to take and condemn, so we owe it to this community to do things in the right way, and I think we have, but it's frustrating because this has gone on for years. So I look forward to that resolution that you draft, but I still think I would like to look into something with a little bit more teeth. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. I think the difference between then and now is we have an actionable directive, and when we didn't act upon it before, we got to this point and nothing was ever done. Now we're prepared to make sure it does get done, and I concur and agree with you, Councilor Paulson, that we have to ensure that that these repairs are done in the manner in which is within the construct of the legal authority that we have and the policy that we have put in place, and not to stop and to keep moving forward until this building is either gone, my opinion, the necessary corrections are made in order to ensure a residence that's viable and occupiable. Counselor Bearable.
Brian, I've got a question for you. Once we start all this process in motion with 120 days, can something be put in there that we have the right to go in to make sure stuff is being accomplished, say every 45 days or something, to make sure it's not just sitting there? Because he's been bad before in other buildings where he hasn't done anything, and hasn't done anything until you step all over and threaten condemnation. Can we put something in that if he agrees to sign that so we can go in and make sure he's accomplishing the improvements?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Bearable, I do believe we could create or insert some provisions into the order that would have essentially check-ins with the property that would give some pre-consent to some additional inspections of the property.
Thank you, Counselor Bearable. Counselor Johnson.
I would move to direct staff to have the resolution ready for the special meeting at 8:30 next Tuesday morning, March 29th. That gives us enough time to adjust the agenda accordingly. And we can take option at the special meeting.
You think? Okay, moved by Counselor Johnson to direct staff have the resolution ready for the special council meeting was scheduled for March 29th was it 8:15 in the morning? 8:30 in the morning. Thank you. Supported by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Mr. Kingsley, would you like to address the council with respect to this matter?
Thank you, Bruce Kingsley from 414 Fifth. Few questions that were brought up. Obviously, we're not super pleased with this property still being promised action on. You are frustrated with the few years that you've been dealing with it. Try 14 years on for size. We have been promised so many times. I appreciate Charlie's comments on it not being followed through with. I had a very brief time to look at the letters that were drafted, and immediately I can shoot holes in that left and right. You know, it states that the property's been under construction. That's just a flagrant lie. They may have painted a room last fall, and there was somebody there last week with a drill that did a little bit of work, and that is literally all the construction that has been done on that place since 2016. I think I had stated before, I know Mr. Tillman brought in a dumpster back in last year, I believe, and proceeded to fill it with garbage from his other properties. Almost none of that came from this property, but it was to give you the impression that something was being done. But if you think anything constructive has been done to this property, you're just being lied to again. As to the 120 days, that is an acceptable time frame as long as that 120 days. I guess I want to know, does that apply to both dwellings? Because I see it broken down as two dwellings, 410 and 412. Does that 120 days extend to both properties, and is that the extent of both properties?
Brian?
Thank you. Mayor, it would. It would cover everything that's covered by the letters that were relayed back to the council.
And I looked at some of the photos and some of the descriptions of the items that you put, and I think the description, the inspection was wholly inadequate. Right after, my wife actually called me and told me that the inspection was being done. I came home as quick as I could, and right after your inspectors had left, I took probably 30 additional pictures of flaws in just the outside of that dwelling that do not show up in your photographs there. So I don't know if you have more photographs. It was my understanding that this was going to be a full 360-degree inspection of the property. Did they go in the attic? I want to know that for sure. The west side of the house has absolutely no footprints in the snow around it, so I don't know how you can say that it was a 360-degree inspection of that property. From looking at the few photographs they took, I tend not to believe that, and have good reason to, I think, over time. So I would like to know the full extent of that. Did they go up in the attic? You know, they talked about no evidence of infestation. 3 hours after they left the property from the inspection, I have on my iPad right there, if anybody's interested, video of squirrels going in through where the roof meets the soffits and fascia. So I have hard physical evidence that it is indeed infested with, at the very least, squirrels, and can be quite certain that rodents, mice are infesting it too. So, yeah, I would like a little bit more detail on what exactly that inspection entailed. I think I'm entitled to that. Yeah, I was taking notes so fast I can't read my notes now. Yeah, I guess that's my main questions right now. Like I said, I just read the report, so I'm sure at the next meeting I will be much better prepared. That was kind of sprung on me last minute.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Before we go to Councillor Paulson, I've been over there on several occasions. I'm sure other councillors, as you know, and while drawing through the snowbanks and looking at some of the stuff as you had indicated about the exterior and how debilitating that really is around the exterior as well. And I too must admit that I did see squirrels, going in and out of the soffits and fascias there as well. So both in the summertime and in the wintertime. So I empathize with you, and the information that you're requesting we should be able to provide to you, whether it's be in the form of the inspector meeting with you or calling you and give you additional information in that regard. Whether it's we need a motion to do that, not, we're making sure that some way or another there's a mechanism in place to answer the questions that you've asked us today. Councillor Paulson.
Mayor. So we had also requested that the health representative from the health department attend this walkthrough. Did that in fact take place? Was the health department there during this inspection?
I'm not aware of any health inspector report. I know they were invited. Whether they appeared or not, I do not know. We have no information about that. That's another question that we could ask.
That would be a
moving
question
forward.
I'd like to have answered.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
We'll do. We'll add that to the list for our code official to provide to us and to the Kingsley family. Anybody else? Mr. Kingsley, we'll hopefully get you that information you're requesting.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming this evening. Okay, item 7.2, the clinic lease. I don't know if you received a email that we're going to be having a meeting at the Arlington Moores Event Center scheduled in April to meet with Essentia regarding the lease, and we hope that I think once Essentia Health Board gets their staff together, we're going to schedule that meeting for all of us to be there at the Arlington Moores Event Center and hopefully discuss the clinic lease and the hospital as well. So does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to this particular unfinished business? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll go to item number 7.3, the rental code ordinance. I know it's people think has called me when that's going to be in effect. I know it's kind of people think it's at a snail's pace, but we are doing our due diligence to make sure we do it right, get everything done in accordance with the law, and to ensure that we have a solid enforceable ordinance moving forward, or compliance ordinance, I should say. John, do you have anything more information about the rental code ordinance?
Not really, Mayor, other than we're delving into the interior and the exterior communication plan as outlined in our previous memo from the Planning Commission to the City Council on our outreach efforts to the stakeholders that should be at the table for the process. So we went over that at the last Planning Commission meeting, and we'll be going over that again at the next Planning Commission, the first Monday in April, which I believe is April 7th.
Thank you, John. Any questions, comments, or concerns from the council with respect to this rental code ordinance? Councilor Bearable.
John, can I ask you a question? From looking at this, I've asked for umpteen years since we started this on this rental code to have due diligence done to see if we can do a zoning along with this for these multiple rental properties so they can't keep spreading all over Virginia. I know there's some state laws that prohibit certain things, but there's 4 in my neighborhood right now. So the valuation of the properties are starting to drop. And I saw that with my taxes coming up that we're paying now. So I haven't seen anybody look for information and background. I know other cities do it. Duluth has done it. Has anything been done, or do you need to research that? Because I'm a little bit upset being a senior counselor here that when I ask something to be done, it's not done. So thank you. I'm not chewing on you.
Mayor,
Mr. Sullivan?
Councilor Baraboo, yeah, we've been looking at numerous things when it comes to potential short-term rentals and long-term rentals as far as, Airbnb type, where that's happening. And I think when you referred to Duluth, they've been doing a lot of work on that. They've been limiting the number of short-term rentals at Airbnb. I think what your concern is more long-term rentals where you have, for instance, a single-family zoning district that's R1, and suddenly somebody buys the home and they turn around and they rent it out, and there could be 3, 4, 5 people in that property. Technically doesn't meet the zoning ordinance, so we would have to go through that. And as part of this process, we're going to try to take an inventory of what we have and what the current zoning is, and what do we need to do to fix that. So it will be part of that process. So I apologize that this is taking a while. I guess we decided as a city and a planning commission that we wanted to take a very deliberate path and not just do this for several reasons. Number 1, for public notification, and for number 2, for staffing. But that certainly ties into it.
I know, John, there's not much we can do. We're getting more and more of these 4 residential houses for people that are mentally handicapped, et cetera. They're in one home that so they're buying them up. The people that are housing the individuals that need care. And that's one of the areas, if we're going to get those mixed all over town, I don't mind that they're being taken care of. But when they come into an area, that does devalue your property area, no matter what anybody says. And I didn't move to where I moved to have all kinds of multiple places being sold. And they're selling them because they're paying whatever the person wants for those homes.
Councilor Baraboo, I would say that the one challenge, if you will, that the city faces, not to give you a history lesson because you could probably give it to me, but back in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, the state of Minnesota typically housed people that were either had tuberculosis. We had tuberculosis hospitals. We had what they, very derogatory term, but we had insane asylums. We had all those kind of things, and they were in Cambridge and St. Peter and Brainerd and all these places. And what the state did is they essentially shut all those down. When I was the community development director in Cambridge, we tore down 500,000 square feet of beautiful old buildings from the 1920s that housed all these people. So where did they go? Where they went is in all of our neighborhoods all across the state of Minnesota. And what the state of Minnesota will do is they will license group homes, and they can be for a variety of things. And we have no control over that, literally no control. They license it. State law trumps, I don't mean to take Brian's hat right now, but check me if I'm wrong, Brian, but he's smiling. So state law trumps local law. So we have a real difficult time controlling those. But that being said, that doesn't mean that we can't see what we have, change our zoning where it might be needed, and enforce those areas that aren't following zoning districts.
Brian, does that take precedent even though we're a charter city, those state laws like that? I don't believe it does if we're a charter city, correct? Or does it?
Well,
We can't control our own legally chartered city with what goes where. That's a challenge I think needs to go to court again.
Thank you, Mayor, if I may.
Ryan, please, thank you.
Counselor, it's a complicated and fairly dynamic issue. It's, there's a lot of different aspects that come into play. And what we have to be careful about is we obviously can't spot zone, we can't zone against certain types of properties coming in. We also have to be careful that we're compliant with ADA and some of the other requirements. And those laws and those requirements would trump our local ordinances and our zoning ordinances.
We could take a whole chunk of Virginia and do something, not on an individual basis. I understand, like the Sox homes and those other ones where they're treating people that have difficulties with issues and can't get into nursing homes and other things. And I understand that. I'm not knocking how those people are helping the individuals. But when all of a sudden you got 4 of them within a block of you, that's a pretty big chunk of one part of the city. And that's what's happened out where I live. And they're buying expensive homes to do this with. They have no money qualms at all. Because I know 2 of the people that sold the properties to that individual corporation, and they paid over market value for them. That's where I have the upset, if I want to continue and live in that area.
Thank you, Councilor Bearable. Any other comments, questions with respect to the rental orders? Thank you, John, for the update moving forward, and we look forward to some more information coming from this new rental ordinance. So, move to item 8, discussion items. Item 8.1 is adopt a resolution to reestablish the precinct boundaries and precincts due to the redistricting by the state of Minnesota. Whenever the state of Minnesota does redistricting, there's a law that requires us to reassess and do our precincts changes as well to reestablish our precinct boundaries. In this particular case, in discussion with our city clerk today and our city administrator, that we're just required to do this as a administrative duty. It does not change our precinct boundaries in any way. So looking for an approval to adopt the resolution to reestablish these precinct boundaries and precincts due to the redistricting by the state of Minnesota.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Freely, been supported by Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 8.2 is adopt the resolution approving the year-end transfers for December 31st, 2022. We do this every year, and I'm going to refer to our City Finance Director, Sherry Erickson, to give us a little synopsis about these. Sherry?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Just a correction on your agenda, it should be for year ending 2021. So this is a standard process, it's normal year-end closing procedure. And I can just walk you through this resolution, starting with transfers from the general fund into the Fund 201, which is the Lakes Beautification Fund of $20,000. These are budgeted 2021 items. Fund 229, which is Tennis for All, that was the deficit of $28,953.74. Fund 290, Vita, this was allocation of $50,000 for the downtown redevelopment. Then to fund back into the general fund, because the general fund had carried this expense. Fund 399, lease debt services, we levied for this. This was $131,257. This includes some of our things like the sweepers, squad cars, lease items that we have budgeted in the general fund. Fund 363, which was the 2022, we levied this for the Evansfield, 2020B bond, which we levied was $160,900 $97.01. From Fund 217, Heating and Energy Loan Fund, this was just cleanup. This was a small amount, $622.34 that came in a year, so we transferred that to general fund. From Fund 360, which happens to be the 2020A, which is the Iron Trail Motors Event Center bond. We transferred $150,000. And to the debt service fund, $129,507.50. From Fund 502, we transferred $3,619, and that was for into the general fund. That is part of the allocation for streets. From the Fund 360 is the 2028 bonds. Once again, this is allocation of $10,861,846.56. This is the bond monies that goes to pay all those Kraus-Anderson funds that you see. The Fund 364, this is the street and alley project from last year. So that's $3,924,935.05. This is to even out those and balance out those funds.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. Any questions or looking for a motion to adopt the resolution moved by Counselor Freilieb? Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Bearable to adopt the resolution approving the year-end transfers for December 31st with a correction of 2021. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8.3 is adopt a resolution approving the memorandum of understanding between the Virginia Police Department and Range Mental Health Center.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support?
I'll support. Go ahead, Gary.
Support by Counselor Freilieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. And with regret, under item 8.4, accept the resignation of Daryl Napper from the Evans Virginia Airport Authority.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Support by Counselor Freilieb. Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, I'm going to say Counselor Johnson.
So I just want to point out, because it's been coming up several times, the airport is not closing. Let me repeat that. The airport is not closing. The Airport Commission has hired an independent contractor to do the general maintenance, the management of the property, keeping the pilot rest area open. We've contracted and have someone to do NOTAMs, and NOTAMs are notices if there's something at the airport that's different than it should be. That's being taken care of. Also, the contractor will probably be plowing as we speak or tomorrow morning, and they will be taking care of grass and property. We are also currently in the process of establishing a new FBO contract, the fixed wing based operator. And I just really need to emphasize that anybody who's thinking or asking if the airport is closing, the answer is no. That we've got a, what is it, Mayor, a 15 or 20, 30-year plan of improvements, including right-of-ways and so it's not closing, and I just need to put that, this is the appropriate place to put that since this was on the agenda already. So airport not closing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. So it has been moved and supported to accept the resignation from Daryl Napper from the Evans Airport Authority. This is the item that's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion about the resignation?
I want to ask you or Steve a question after we vote.
Sure, certainly, Councilor Bearable. Is there any further discussion on the resignation? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Counselor Bearable.
Either one of you, Steve, is there any truth to the rumors I'm hearing that UPS is not going to be coming in there anymore?
Go ahead, Counselor Johnson.
That has not been brought to the board. Chris is the manager, and I'm guessing that Chris, if you've heard anything, it would come to the board, correct? So they're all rumors. So anybody who's spreading those rumors they're basically they're hurting the reputation of the airport. Thank you.
That's what I've been telling
I
people.
appreciate you asking, Charlie.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
We'll
you.
just continue to tell them that there's no decisions on any of that stuff yet. Okay, thank you.
And just to briefly, the airport authority has taken over the fuel delivery and the purchasing of the fuel because we can do that in a larger amount, saves money. The airport manager used to do that, doesn't do that anymore. But you need an airport manager in order to operate the facility, in order to allow the aircraft to land and take off. And so, as Councilor John is accurate, there is just a rumor that that the commerce is going to continue to flow through the Everett, Virginia airport until those private entities decide they don't want to. And there's a King Air that flies out of there, there's UPS that flies out of there, Bemidji Air flies out of there, so that will continue to move forward, Councilor Bearable. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so move to item 8.5 on the agenda, which is adopt a resolution approving the contract with Steve Rockola as an independent contractor for the operation of the cable public access television, and it's the same contract that was the previous manager had. So looking for a resolution moving forward or some discussion regarding this contract.
I'll move to approve.
Support.
Councilor Paulson moves to approve, supported by Councilor Johnson. Further discussion, Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, I was able to attend the meeting last week with Pam and Steve and Britt, and he's got some amazing plans. He's really looking hard into what's going to happen, what he can do. And he's in the process of presenting a report, but he's really looking to put the community back into community access television. I was very impressed with him. And he gave us a little brief synopsis of who's doing what, and so I wholeheartedly support this, and I think we're in for some really nice upgrades as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Johnson. There's also some additional information regarding the quality of our equipment here in City Hall. Part of the major issue is with the feed that comes from MediaCom, and there's some issues about MediaCom not willing or not able to or not wanting to, or I don't know what the proper term is, upgrading the line coming in, or which would really improve our feed. So let everybody know that. So thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion?
Well, if MediaCom,
Councilor Bearable.
if MediaCom is doing that, why don't we crank up their fees and stuff like they crank up all the other for the usage of the poles and stuff that they pay for here, so we can get something done by them, because they're lazier than heck. And I'm not very happy with them not willing to come in and do this. I'll do it for any private paying individual that has a home or a television or that other offshoot that they've got now. So I think we should send a very strong letter from our attorney saying that we need this upgraded for community access for their product.
Yeah, and I think we at one point in time, we invited them to come to a meeting. They declined to do so. So there might be something we want to do moving forward. So thank you, Councilor Bearable. We voted on that? Thank you. Okay, move to item 9, committee reports. Item 9.1, the committee of the whole meeting that was held on March 15th, 2022. This is normally the part of the council meeting that's detailed out by our city administrator. She's not here this evening, attending a very important conference with respect to her duties and responsibilities. So we'll move to the committee reports. Committee of the whole meeting that was held on March 15th, 2022. Item 9.1A, approve the closure of the library on May 20th, 2022 at 1 p.m. and all day on August 17th, 2022 in preparation from their special events that they have going forward. Councilor Beyondich.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Beyondich. Is there support?
Support.
Support by everybody. let's pick one. Counselor Freely, is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries, thank you. Item 9.1B, approve to barricade Fifth Street South in front of the library on July 12, 2022, to hold the commercial truck day event at the library.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Freely, is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Paulson, is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item 9.1C, approve the updated contract with the Friends of the Greenhouse, also known as FROG, for the year ending December 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Freely, supported by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item 9.1D, approve the proposed letter of understanding with AFSCME local regarding the custodial services staff schedules at the Iron Train Motors Event Center.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Freely, is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Counselor Baraboo, is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item 9.1E, approve the job description for the Administrative Assistant 2, administration with a starting wage of $30.87 an hour, and approve an internal and external posting if necessary. Moved by Counselor Johnson, is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Freely, is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item 9.1F, reinstate the charging of any late fees that should be assessed to all invoiced accounts in the city of Virginia that was held in abeyance during the COVID pandemic, and we are now reinstating these charging of late fees. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson, is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Beyondich, is there any further discussion? Counselor Freely.
Not retroactive.
Not retroactive, correct. Thank you for that clarification. No, beginning now. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item 9.1G, abide by Section 25 in the lease contract for the golf course restaurant and set the contract termination date of September 30th, 2022. Looking for a motion, Counselor Johnson.
I will move section 25, paragraph L.
Okay, moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? First Counselor Paulson, and then over to Counselor Baraboo.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would just like to clarify at what part of the process is Mr. Eric Honkin gonna get to speak?
Well, once we vote on this, Mr. Honkin will have an opportunity to come forward and speak with respect to this. And he has some documents that he provided to all of us and have an opportunity to speak publicly about this. If you prefer to have him come up before we vote regarding this section of lease, we can certainly do that.
I would prefer that, Mayor.
I would prefer to. I mean, it just, I think we skipped under the appearance is limited to 10 minutes. So I would like to give him, I mean, it's not my decision to say that, but I just, in sequence, if that would be allowed, I think that would be respectful.
Sure, we can certainly do that. It's amenable to all counselors involved. Before we vote on this section 25 lease for the golf course contract, we can certainly call forward everybody that comes to the city council meeting has an opportunity to speak. We can make accommodations, whether it's in the beginning, in the middle, or during the end, or with respect to any issue that's adversely or promotionally affects or advantages any citizen or any entity. So at this point in time, with respect to item 9.1G, abiding by Section 225 lease contract for the golf course restaurant, and set the contract termination date of September 30th, 2022. We will ask Mr. Honkinen, who is representing Mr. Kerfeld and Mrs. Kerfeld with respect to the Northern Divide Golf Course, to come forward and address the council as deemed appropriate. And if necessary, we certainly can waive any time limit as we move forward with this discussion. Good evening, Mr. Honkinen, and welcome to the council meeting.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councilors. Thank you for having me. And so what I provided, I know that it was last minute to you, is a proposed lease that I did actually send to Miss Britt C. Benny's last Thursday. And I believe Mr. Lindsay, I had an opportunity to talk to him, and he was able to review this lease. So with regard to any changes, I can just tell you that it's essentially the same lease before, except the right to first removal provision was removed from that, as it seemed to be an issue. Also took out any of the invoicing that goes back and forth. And it did take out the termination clause that is being voted on here. And so those are the three main changes. With regard to the balance of the lease, everything else is essentially is weighted in favor of the city. I think the first time that I had worked on this contract was when there was a 1-year contract, and then there was a subsequent 3-year contract, which is what you guys have, which is pending right now. But in that first year contract, I think the terms were more at parity between the two parties. The second time it came back, they were all weighted towards the city, pretty much entirely all the way through. And now we've done that even more. And I also want to just give an update to the council that as of today, sent to both Franzen Bank and to North Star Credit Union, request for the ACH transfer to be made on the first of the month for the auto pay of the rent going forward. And so that was another issue that has been, I think, resolved now successfully beginning for April 1st. And so I understand, and then otherwise the rest of the lease remains the same, and it would be a 3-year lease with no right to first refusal, which means that it's a hard end at the end, unless the parties choose to extend that mutually, but there's no automatic right to an extension. And so that would have to be worked on between the parties. So it is 1 3-year lease. To the extent that I would advise my client, I would be expecting, would tell him that, you should not expect that you would be in there any longer than 3 years based on this contract, because there's nothing there that protects him. I know that when we last met, there was a couple of resolutions out of the committee of the whole. It was my hope to try to resolve this issue for my client so that he and the restaurant is able to continue in effect, and that they're able to move on without having to endure any more potential issues or litigation. The problem that I'm running into is I have a time problem, is that as this is approaching, it becomes an issue that I have to preserve my client's rights by filing a lawsuit. I don't want to do that. And I know he doesn't want to. It is expensive, and I think it mucks up things as well. I would add one of the things that I suppose, like all lawyers, different opinions, but I remember Councilor Friedlieb's question with regard to the right to first refusal, if that would be enforced by the court, or is it possible to be enforceable? And I spoke, and Mr. Lindsay had answered that question, no. I would say that the opposite, as the answer would be yes. I think the only way that it could be no is that there would have to be a review, or there'd have to be a determination that the contract is ambiguous, and that then there would need to be the requirement for parole evidence, which I don't even know if that necessarily exists. All of that said, that requires actually a trial, I think, at the end of the day, to determine whether or not there is parole evidence, and then a court has to make a determination on that, which is a long period of time. And I think that's not, I don't think, a way that anybody wants to move forward. And, I once again will say again and again and again, like, my client does not want to litigate this matter. It is a matter of being essentially forced into a position where it's the only card that can be played because there are none left. And so, as you know, I've spoken to some of you, just trying to like address any and all concerns in this matter so that my client is able to move on with his restaurant and you're able to move on with the business of the city. With that, I would just encourage you that the lease is provided here. I would think that it could be adopted. And like I said, if Mr. Lindsay wants to opine on it, I don't know if there's really anything else that could be added anymore into the favor of the city. The 14 days is still there with regard to any default on it. So there would need to be a 14-day cure period, which is already there. And if there was an issue that wasn't cured within that 14 days, then it could be terminated. So, but like I said, the main issue seems to me has been the issue regarding payment, and that has been, and I think Ms. Erickson, I copied in her, she responded today on getting the ACH set up for beginning April 1st. And so to that extent, I would just ask that the council consider adopting the lease, and then the parties can move on, and then there's certainty between the parties, and there's no unnecessary time or money wasted for both sides. There's no litigation, there's no discovery, there's no depositions, and it's my client, this is his livelihood. So really at the end of the day, I think for anybody who owns a business here, they only have, this is their baby, so they only have one choice but to protect it. And so that's why, I don't want to operate on like rumors or anything like that, and that's why the actions I've taken so far is to like show that, my client is serious about this. But again, here again and again to ask for reconciliation in this matter. My client has done everything that the city has requested. And to the extent he was told that, if he paid and cured his $18,000, which he did, that his lease would be renewed. And so, and again, even going beyond that, even renewing this lease with even less protections for him going into the future, he's agreeing to that. So I don't know what else he can really offer. I don't know what else we can do. If there's something, please let me know. But otherwise, I think it's fairly straightforward, and I just ask that the council adopt it. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll be here for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Honkin. And before we go to Councilor Johnson, just to clarify, we're going to be voting on item 9.1G and 9.1H with respect to the golf course contract. Just a reminder to the general public and the elected body, and to all of you listening, that we have not given our city attorney the authority to negotiate a new lease. We haven't done that. So our attorney doesn't have that authority at that time. We haven't given him the authority to do so. We only gave him the authority to act on the Section 25 of the lease, which we're voting on now, and then our motion on 9.1H. So in regards to Section 9.1G, regarding Section 25 of the lease for the golf course contract to set the termination date of September 30th, 2022, we'll ask for a discussion with respect to this particular part of that lease agreement and the issue with the golf course, and move to Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hopkinen, who signs your paycheck?
I do.
From your client, who pays you? Who are you representing? I just want to be clear.
I represent Northern Divide Restaurant.
Okay. Has the city ever contracted you to write a lease for them?
I don't understand your question.
You have presented us with a lease. Did we contract you to write that lease?
No.
Okay. Because you're writing a lease in the best interest of your client. We need to write a lease in the best interest of the taxpayers of the city of Virginia.
I'm using the same.
Excuse me, I have the floor. Thank you. And I also have a question that who told you or your client that if he paid his bills, the lease would automatically be renewed?
I believe that that was the sentiment of the council.
No,
when he was here.
who told you specifically?
You can ask my client.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate those clarifications because I'm going to continue on the path we started last week because that, I believe, is in the best interest of the citizens of Virginia. And I believe that our attorney needs to be writing the lease, not somebody else's attorney. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I understand that we never gave our attorney the authority to negotiate a lease, so I think that has yet to be decided, if in fact it's going to be decided. So thank you, Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion before we vote on item 9.1G? Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, these are two separate issues, actually, in this thing. The first one, the G item, I missed that vote because I had to go to a medical thing. And I'm disappointed in this council that we should still give the opportunity for Mr. Honkin and his client, along with our city attorney, to get together and work on a comparable lease for the city and Mr. Kerfield. I can't vote for item G. I'm going to be a no vote, even though I missed the first one. So just to let you know, I'm going to vote no on this particular one.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Baraboo. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson, and then I'm going to ask some clarification from our city attorney. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor, and I may be going down that road with you.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so point of clarification, because we have one less council member tonight, if the vote is split, how does is it dead or is it continue?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. A tie vote is a failed vote.
The
So
tie
if it-
vote is a failed vote.
So if there's a motion put before the body, before the council, and the vote ties, then the motion does not succeed.
So technically, and I have no idea how anyone's going to vote, but technically, if we go tie on one side, tie on another side, it's just going to continue to be tied up. Is that correct? With no action?
It would result in no action.
Okay. Would it make more sense to table to further discuss? If the vote moves in that direction and it fails? Sorry, I don't,
Brian?
I'm trying to just understand options.
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor, so I guess the way that I have to respond is because I can't tell the council what the best option is as far as the discussions and those things. So if there's a series of tied votes that result in no action, it could be brought forward to another meeting. Or if the council believes that additional discussion would result in a more full consideration and may have an impact, it's always an option by the council to table it. The important piece of a tabling motion, and especially in light of what Mr. Honkonen has indicated, is to make sure that there's a specific date and time set when that item would be taken back up again.
Thank you, Brian. And I'm not trying to prolong this in any way. What I'm trying to understand is this is new before us. We've had no time to have a discussion. If we take this step on this motion, where does that leave us? I'm just trying to understand the logistics of what we're doing here tonight. And would it be more advantageous to have more discussion so we all have a better understanding of where we're going with this?
Well, with respect to the item G, please chime in if you would, please, Brian. This was a motion and approval by the council to take this step to terminate a lease without giving any other authority to negotiate a lease. I think that's where Mr. Honkin is here, trying to take into account, as from his statements, that he's now, trying to find a way in which to do that, but bringing this to the council, of course, from my perspective, I don't think we'd be doing any negotiations of a lease. We have a copy of what he deems he thought comes from our discussions, but any negotiated release would obviously come through our city attorney, which he doesn't have the authority to do at this point in time. And so I'm afraid that that if we try to table this, it's a effort in which to try to garner another vote, one way or the other, from the absent council member. So I don't know.
I guess I don't look at it that way. The way
Yeah.
I would look at it is that it allows time for discussion, not wrangling, but it allows time to process and discuss.
And we could do that separately, but on G is the action that the council took.
Correct.
And so we
We're
vote on
being
that.
asked, we're being asked to reconsider that
We are.
with what Mr. Honkinen just spoke about. So that's what I'm trying to balance out here and to understand what our options are for continued discussion. Because I wouldn't vote for this right now without having a full, robust conversation with our council.
With respect to a lease?
With the lease, with what's before us.
Well,
Not trying to be offensive, Eric, or Mr. Honkinen, but I just, like, we need a chance to talk this through. So, but I don't want to close the door or do something. I'd rather have some discussion. So if tabling would allow that, that's why I asked the question. Thank you.
Certainly, I understand that. Thank you, Councilor Paulson. But if I may just add a little before we go to Councilor Johnson and then Councilor Freely and Councilor Bearable, that, again, looking through this document that was provided by Mr. Honkin on behalf of his client, it's something that we consider, but normally, because of some action that was taken earlier by Mr. Honkinen and his client with respect to service of some potential litigation moving forward, then when, so this is something, any additional information about other action the council taken should come through the attorney-client relationship between us and our city attorney, but he does not have the authority at this time from the council to negotiate any part of this document that was provided by Mr. Honkinen. So just a little bit of clarification. So we'll go around the room. First, Councilor Freely, Councilor Bearable, and then over to Councilor Johnson. Councilor Freely.
I just feel we're a little ahead of ourselves to be considering G, in part because the parameters we established for Mr. Kerfeld to meet the obligation of the late payments for the 2 weeks was accomplished and remedied. They've also proposed to abolish the first right of refusal, which was also a point of discussion, and also to implement an auto pay, which was another point of discussion. So they've made concessions with regard to doing what's necessary to appease the city with regard to the issues that arose that caused us to get to this point. So I could not be in favor at this point in time, and I think it would be probably preferable and timely for the attorneys to discuss further the revision of a lease, whether it be a 1 year, a 3 year, or whatever, rather than us determine what we should do at this point in time. I think there needs to be further discussion with regard to streamlining this to be the benefit to the city, like Councilor Johnson alludes to, and move forward with further discussion so that we can consider the potential renewal for a lease. Because I just, in my estimation, and I'll be frank, I know Mitch Kerfeld's work ethic, and I know his sense of resolve. And I don't feel that any of the things that have been brought to the table have been so egregious as to us to consider taking away his livelihood at this point in time in his career. So I'm not in favor of moving forward with G at this point in time. I think further discussion needs to be made, particularly at a legal standpoint, and to come up with a lease that is preferable and beneficial to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, just a quick question. Between the two attorneys, Brian, can you get together with Mr. Honkanen this week yet, before next Tuesday? And then we can resolve it. If you guys can put together a comparable, agreeable lease between the two of you. You're a city attorney. We'd have to authorize you tonight to do that. So that's a special meeting next Tuesday. Can you guys get that done by then? Because I don't know when's your drop dead date, Eric?
I think April 1st.
April 1st. Okay, so we got a little bit of time yet. But that would be my recommendation. Tabling's not going to do any good. It's just, but we can have a discussion at that 29th meeting. We can close part of it just for our discussion between the city and the council on the 29th. Besides, before we make a decision on it, one way or the other. That's, and if you can get it out to us confidentially before next Tuesday. Can you do that, or is your schedule too busy to look at this?
Brian?
Mayor, thank you. I do have availability in my schedule. I am in trial this Thursday for a one-day jury trial. My calendar is light tomorrow. My calendar, fingers crossed, is light on Friday. And so I do have availability to work on this project, yes.
We have two contracts. Basically, we still have the city's old contract with Mr. Kerfield. We have the new proposed one from his client, from Eric's client. And if you can put tweaks in a contract for the city, can either be different or mirror somewhat Mr. Honkanen's and give it to us on next Tuesday. We can close a session for a while and discuss it amongst the councilors. If you can send out the city's part of it confidentially before next Tuesday. We already have Mr. Honkanen's.
And
That would be my suggestion. Otherwise, we're wasting time.
And I think, Councilor Bearwood, that's an action that we would have to take as a council to authorize our city attorney to do that. And so right now, this is good fodder of discussion moving forward. But again, there is a motion on the floor and a second to abide by Section 25 and set the contract termination date for the September 30th. So that's what we'll be voting on now. Any additional motions could be made later on one way or the other. So Councilor Johnson, then back over to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
Mr. Lindsay, if no action is taken on the current lease, what happens at the end of April?
At this point, the city has taken formal action not to renew the lease come the end of April.
Thank you. And that was my whole point of by extending the current lease until September 30th to allow for the discussion we're having, to allow them to get through the summer, to allow the city to get through the summer, to allow us to have time. Then H is also part of that in that the Kerfields and anybody else interested in providing service at the clubhouse would have until April 1st to present some sort of letter of interest. And that gives us all summer to negotiate with the Kerfields or with anybody else as we look forward. Somewhere I feel there's confusion that if we don't, that anytime I've sat in this chair and someone has come in this room and said, you need to do this right now or else, I have regretted that decision. And I can be very specific about those. I think that we are, by extending the current contract through September, it allows us all to take a step back and be very diligent about what we're doing. Otherwise, the contract's gonna, at least expires on April 30th, and that's it. And I'm trying to, with my motion, extend this and give us all several months to be able to have this discussion and figure out what's best. So that's where I'm at with this, is extending the time. Quite honestly, I don't like being threatened. If you feel that litigation is in your best interest, that is, you have every right in the world to do that. And I think that if that's what you feel should happen, then you need to do that. But I think that as far as the city goes, giving us some time to figure this out so it's not rush, rush, rush is where we need to be on this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilor Johnson. But before we go to Councilor Paulson, I just want to just clarify the concern that I have with respect to this motion about Section 25 of the lease. it's not an extension of the lease so much, it's a termination. If it said to set the contract extension to September 30th, I'd be more comfortable. You're extending the lease to September 30th so you could continue potentially to negotiate a new lease, which could be put in force prior to the expiration of this lease on September 30th. But the action that we're asking, is on the motion and forward today, is to terminate the lease, not to expire the lease there. So the goal and objective of that is for us to terminate the lease regardless, and then take other interest later on down the road, whether it's through an RFP or whatever it's going to be after the letter of interest coming on April 1st. So that's my concern, that it's not an expiration, extending of a lease for expiration under the current contract, and in the interim, try to negotiate a new contract, terms that are more amenable to the city and concessions that need to be made by, by the client or by our leasee. So it says termination, not expiration. So the goal and objective of this under 620 is to actually terminate the lease completely. So it really doesn't give us time. So I look at it differently then. I don't look at it as an extension or an expiration. I look at it as the section to terminate. And I just don't think that termination of a lease and giving the Northern Divide the opportunity to allow them to continue to operate through September the 30th, which benefits the city, but knowing that after that, goodbye, and then compete with others, potential clients, if we choose to do so down the road, which we haven't made that decision to do either. So for me, that's problematic for me. I just think that, and I wasn't at that meeting, the first meeting, but it's my preference, my personal preference as an elected official here, that we give an opportunity for our attorney, give the authority to our attorney to start a negotiation of a lease. And it's not has to be by April the 1st. We don't have to rush to get it done if we can't get it done, but then at least give them the opportunity to continue to operate as an extension until we can come to an agreement or not come to agreement moving forward. So if it was Section 25 said expiration, it says termination, I'd be more comfortable with that. And maybe that may be semantics, but for me, we're being final about this, and I just don't think that I can't go along with that. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So that's part of what I was going to ask for is clarification on the Section G. If you go to Section G, or excuse me, Section G, Section 25, well, it's G, is it G specific, or I thought it was L?
This is just item 9.1G on our agenda.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So as I'm looking through this, what we're executing though, it says abide by Section 25, and it should actually state item L, because Section 25 has A, B, C, D, E, F, general provisions, entire agreement, assignment, amendments, non-discrimination, governing law. I mean, I think that's what you're touching on, Mayor, is that it's the actual closure of the severability portion in the contract. Am I not correct on that? Because this is basically blanketing Section 25.
Correct. So, Mayor, if I may.
Please, Brian.
So, where we stand currently is this, as I understand it. The city has given a notice that it intends not to renew the lease as of the end of April. So that's one deadline. There is Section 2 within the lease that has that language about right of first refusal. There has been correspondence tendered by the Northern Divide that has indicated that it would like to exercise its right under paragraph 2 to extend the lease an additional 3 years. The motion, as I understood it, that related to Section 25 was essentially this, that the council would agree that it would continue under the existing lease terms for the summer of 2022. The city would also give notice during that time, or would give notice that it's exercising Section 25L of the contract to give that notice of termination. And that was also part of the overriding theme that the agreement was this, the current lease that's in effect now is an agreement that doesn't work. It's not in the city's best interest. And what that, my understanding, the intent of that extension of operating under the terms of the current lease out through September was to do a couple of things. Number one, it was to make clear all the rights. Number two, it was to give some certainty over the summer, because my understanding was that the Kerfeld and Northern Divide were up against some deadlines and were getting questions about space rentals that they had arranged for this summer. And at the end of the September, as of the 30th, that termination notice under paragraph 25L would become effective, and the contract would terminate as of that date. Nothing within that motion precluded continued conversations or negotiations over that period. It was just that was a way to set possession over the summer and to set a hard end date. Now, implicit in that is there's controversy over paragraph 2 and what its actual effect is. And so it does create something of a question about the legal status at this point.
Okay, and if I may add, so in that specific section, lessor grants to lessee the right of first refusal upon terms agreeable to both parties to elect to continue the operations of the restaurant facility at the golf course clubhouse upon the termination of the term of this lease and any subsequent lease between the parties hereafter. So the way I read that, Brian, and I'd maybe like a clarification, that the leaseor grants to lessee the right of first refusal upon terms agreeable to both parties. And that's where I see that we're having a problem. And that's why I asked about tabling. Maybe tabling doesn't make sense, but what I was trying to accomplish is so that we could continue the discussion about what we want, about what the city wants to put in this lease. So it says in there, lessor grants to lessee the right of first refusal, comma, upon terms agreeable to both parties, comma, to elect to continue the operations of the restaurant facility. So that doesn't tell me that it's a right of first refusal for another 3-year contract. That tells me that we need to come back to the table to negotiate agreeable terms for both parties. Am I correct on that?
Brian?
Yes, as far as a strict interpretation, from a strict interpretation perspective, the clause about upon terms acceptable to both parties does qualify the right of first refusal that precedes it. And that the issue here is that the language in paragraph 2 is a non-traditional extension period. And so when Mr. Honkonen uses the word ambiguity, I understand what he means, because there are a couple of different interpretations that can be made to that phrase, and it introduces some doubt into the exact operation of that language.
And if I may, and then back to Councilor Paulson, I think there was discussion later or after about, we did talk about agreeable both parties. And there was some comments that were made within this discussion that we're not agreeing. So that's why we're giving notice of termination. So there's so that was, we don't agree to that. So if you're not agreeing to that, we exercise Section L to terminate it. You have to give them the notice, which effectively is to the end of September. So that's where we're at, right? I mean, so that's where we're at. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess if I want to land the plane here, and I don't mean to keep talking, but I guess what Mr. Honkin is saying is we're getting hung up on this right of first refusal. That's part of what both parties are or the city is hung up on, or certain people, council members in the city are hung up on that portion of the contract. So, and I don't want to prolong this, but that's why if we were allowed to have discussion, and that's why, in my opinion, that Counselor Johnson voted to do that extension to execute, I guess, section G 25L in there, so that removes the right of first refusal. So is that correct, Brian? That's basically what we were doing, to extend it so everybody had the summer going forward to figure this out, and then at the end of that term, there would be the right to refuse would sunset.
Well, the contract would be terminated. Right?
Well, the option of a right to refusal would sunset at that time.
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and that's why I gave the opinion when asked the question, if the 160-day notice was given, would there continue to be a right of first refusal? And the answer that I gave was no, because if the operation of paragraph 25L was complete and finalized, it results in the absolute termination of the agreement. And that is a right that both parties have under the current agreement to issue that notice and end the contract. And by ending the contract, it ends all the terms within that contract.
Sure. And that's the clarification, but without actually recognizing number two, that we grant them the right to have the first refusal, but it's upon terms that are agreeable to both parties, and that's where we are not at. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And for me, I try to look at the overall perspective of each different section, the way it was voted on. When we're going to go to the next one, it's the parallel approach. So from the way I interpret this, the purpose of the council was to give them the notice under the contract, terminate their contract completely, get them, they're done. No more lease for Northern Divide. And then, under item H, what we're going to be voting on is to ask for letters of interest, so that during the time we get those letters of interest, April 1st until September 30th, we might go off for our pace and try to find somebody else. And I think that I look at this as the attempt to just terminate the lease altogether and get somebody else in there. There's been some comments made about that. So that's my concern, that I think, hindsight being 20/20, is that we should have given the opportunity for our attorney to negotiate a new lease with Northern Divide, and then come up with these changes that we were all concerned about, and then see if this is agreeable to both parties, bring it back to us, and we take a look at, yes, they removed all these things, they meet all these obligations, blah, 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 yada, 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 and are we ready to move forward with a lease or not? We haven't done that. We still haven't given our attorney the authority to do that. So what we're doing is we're just exercising the right under Section 25L and just saying, we're going to give you the notice, which happens to be at the end of September through the summer, buys us some time, but at the end, they're done. And what we're going to do between April 1st and September 30th, and as we move to item H, I just see that as an opportunity. I think we're going down a path of that. So, Brian?
And thank you, Mayor. And so I think the way we talk about this, I think, is important, because as we talk about the different options, the action that is contained within the motion that's currently on the floor is to terminate the agreement, the contract that we're currently operating under. And I think we have to be careful not to equate that necessarily with an action directed at the Northern Divide. I think it's the way that I've always understood this is that action is nothing more than a repetition of the overreaching concept that this agreement's not working. And so I think we've got to be careful to be sure that we're talking about the agreement and that other options that the city may have are still open. And the fact that one action would be taken doesn't necessarily preclude other actions, and it's not necessarily and shouldn't be perceived as, or shouldn't be, the action should not be equivalated with any particular person, group, or party. It's directed at the operation and the legal effect of a contract.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and supported to abide by Section 25, I suppose, L in the lease agreement contract for the golf course and set the contract termination date of September 30th, 2022. Counselor Bearable.
Need to act on this before we go any further with this.
Correct. There's a motion and a second on the floor. We still have further discussion. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. And after listening to all the conversation, I never had in my mind that this was a personal thing. We had discussed this lease, and it was just to sunset that lease to create a new one. It had nothing to do with that you wouldn't be in there again. Everybody would have that opportunity. So I just feel like that this conversation is we're trying to have somebody new come in, and that wasn't from me, that was not it. The lease was not working, and that's what we were trying to fix and to buy some time so we could work on it. So I just wanted to put that out there, that this was nothing, for me, this was just a document that needed to be worked on. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. Any further discussion? Nothing else, so it's been moved and supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No. Roll call, please.
Counselor Bearable,
No.
Counselor Friedlieb,
No.
Counselor Paulson,
Aye.
Beyondich,
Aye.
Counselor Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Cuffey.
No. Motion fails 3-3. Okay, item G is done. Item 9.1H, approved to continue on a parallel path to receive letters of interest for the lease of the golf course,
So moved.
and which are due on April 1st, 2022. Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Is there support? Is there support? Motion fails for lack of support. Okay,
Mayor, may I offer a motion here on this? The big hangup has been that we can't get together with the client and with our attorney to get a satisfactory lease agreement. If the people can put together specific issues other than the money issues we've had with the Kerfields, and that may be solved with negotiations between the two attorneys, that's what I want to see done. Negotiate, because you've got golf season coming up all summer long. You got to have the venue set ahead. Then you've got the holiday season starting after golf season, where they do tremendous amount of business with things that go on at the golf course. And how is anybody going to be able to say, well, this date will be open, we'll be able to serve you? That's my concern. We need to get a contract that's done. And I've never had a complaint to me about food. Every once in a while, service, yes, it's a little slow. Other than that, I've never had a complaint about the food at that establishment. So that's where I'm coming from. We need to get Mr. Honkanen and Brian Lindsay together to come up with a mutual contract that's agreeable to Mr. Kerfield if we decide we want to extend this for a 3-year contract or not. Doing a parallel thing is, which we've already said no to, is ludicrous. You don't do parallel things when you got somebody that's contracted with you, even with an extension. Nobody does that. Nobody in business does that.
So Counselor Bearable, are you prepared to make a motion to some degree?
Yeah. I would like to have our city attorney, Mr. Lindsay, and Mr. Honkinen get together to try to come up with a mutual, agreeable, one contract that could possibly extend the Kerfield's lease.
Okay, that's your motion. Is there support for that motion? Support by Counselor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to say this with all due respect. I appreciate everyone coming here tonight, but with all due respect, the reason that we're here is because of failure to make rent payments over 7 months, or we would not be here, and we would not be in this hard decision, having this, or in this conversation, having to make a hard decision. So I just want to make that clear. I respect that we're having the conversation, but we wouldn't have had to have this difficult conversation had these issues not have been a problem, where we are the fiscal agents and responsible party for our taxpayers and their dollars. So the reason I wanted to have further discussion is because we need to put something together. I agree with that. But we're here not because we want to be here talking about this. So I appreciate you coming in again, and I just wanted to let you know that that's my thought on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. It has been moved and supported to direct our city attorney to meet with the legal representative for Northern Divide and negotiate a lease that's amenable to both parties and bring it back to the council for further discussion. That's the motion. That's the support. Counselor Johnson, further discussion.
How will the city administrator be communicated with during this process since she's out of town in training?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. I am in regular contact with Ms. Zibanez, and I will, by email, by call, and by text, stay in contact with her and get her input.
Thank you, Brian. I have to appreciate Councilor Paulson's words about why we're sitting here today at this point. My concern is that on May 1st, there may not be a contract at all. That was the whole point of extending it. And my concern is that this is going to be rushed. And I'm not okay with rushing these things. I'm concerned about how we'll be moving forward with a lease and how it's going to get resolved in a little over a month. That's my concern.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Honkin, and thank you, Mr. Kerfeld. Thank you, everybody on the council.
There are specific issues that are of concern that we can talk about. I understand that we will do that, but if there's concerns on issues, please let either Mr. Lindsay know or me know so that they can be worked on so that hopefully Mr. Lindsay and I can bring a document that will be agreeable to everybody on the council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Honkin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerfeld. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move to item 9.1 I. Is to approve the letter of request from Jake Keel, the fire marshal, to conduct a fundraising campaign with the National Safety Council for fire prevention materials beginning in April 2022. This is an ongoing thing. It's done on an annual basis. A lot of businesses contribute, and they get a lot of really good resource materials for kids and safety things for a variety of things in education in the schools. It's been an ongoing successful event, and they're just asking for permission to approve the letter of request to do this once again.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Freelieb. Is there support? Support by Councilor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Counselor Beyondich?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this, but my light was on before that came out, and I did have a question.
Sure, go
On
ahead.
the lease, I'm going back to the lease, and I'm sorry they left. Brian, when you start working on this and you draft it, does it come, I mean, are we able to look at that and go through that with that process?
Yes. And if I may, Mayor,
Please, Brian.
yeah, the authority that's given to me is simply to negotiate something to bring back to the council to look at.
Okay, so if we have questions or concerns, when we look at it, we can come forward at that time with them.
Correct, and I will do my best to make the drafts available to the council early, just for informational purposes.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
No, I didn't see your light on, so.
That's okay.
All right, thank you. I apologize for that, Counselor Beyondich. So you get your answer then? Very good, thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 10 on the agenda, which is Commission Liaison Reports. Does any council have a report they'd like to give this evening? Of course, Counselor Bearable.
I'm just going to be funny tonight. Sorry, I have to.
And then
delay-
over to
I have
Counselor Johnson. Go
I have to
ahead.
delay it another week because the commission meeting doesn't meet till next Monday because of the way these meetings fell this month. So you'll have to listen to a back meeting that will happen Monday.
So we have a reprieve this evening. Okay. I'm only joking. Thank you. Counselor Johnson.
Mayor, I'm pleased to announce that the Green Envy event held at the Greenhouse was a smashing success this last Saturday. They raised well over $500, which is kind of good for us. And anybody who'd like to see what the Greenhouse was, there was a Facebook Live done on the city Facebook page, as well as there's still memberships, folks willing to be a member and volunteer at the Greenhouse and help the botanical gardens are welcome to contact Frog, Friends of the Greenhouse, or they can get a hold of me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Okay, any other liaison reports? Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. I feel like I need a flag over here. From the library. I know, we do need some laughter tonight. Our library meeting went well. If anybody has not gone to the library to see the new carpet, it looks amazing. And I forgot my posters that I had diligently grabbed, but the book sale is coming up. They are taking donations. Look on the website for the dates when you can drop books off, and it will be held at the new event center, so I hope everybody can attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. Yeah, it's the library program they do. They do phenomenal work. So thank you for that, Counselor Beyondich. Okay, we'll move to item 11, department head reports. We'll go from left to right. Britt is not available, and we'll go back to our City Attorney Brian. Brian Lindsay, any report to give this evening?
No formal report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Anything from you, Sherry?
Yes, sir. Mayor, council, first week in April here, we should be starting our audit for 2021, so the staff is under a little bit of pressure and deadlines right now, so be kind to us.
Okay. Always, yes. Thank you, Sherry. John Sullivan, anything on your side of the staff, on the fence there?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I spent a lot of time doing today was working with MnDOT and the county, and I had a meeting at the county building. So going back a little bit, you will recall that the Minnesota Department of Transportation has hired some consultants to work with the county in a big group, and I've been that designated person along with Britt to go to these meetings, and I'm also representing Virginia Avila Economic Development Authority as well, because they have property that's impacted by this. And for the benefit of the public, by the year 2025, MnDOT and the county are planning on doing substantial upgrades to 3 intersections. And from north to south, those would be Borgen Road at the north, which is in Virginia, and then moving down to Progress Parkway, which is in Evelyn, and then in the southern end of it, it would be Hattrick. And if you will recall, we were presented with a number of concepts. We had those nice color maps. Each one of these projects, if you remember, we had about 3 or 4 these different concepts. Well, I met with the staff today, and they have selected their preliminary concepts. So there will be a public process, and this will be brought out, but I would like to get this on the agenda soon. I'll work with you and with Britt, and we'll present these, but I have the preliminary concepts here. So there's a lot of considerations to look at these, and they're not all roundabouts. If you're wondering, I'm sure you're all waiting on the edge of your seats. They're not all roundabouts, which kind of surprised me, but there's a lot of method to their madness, and they've done a lot of work on it. So I felt like it was a really good presentation today, and I got a lot out of it, and I think I'm ready to bring this forward and have them come here and educate us more on why they're doing what they're planning on doing. So this is all in relation to traffic and safety improvements because of Rock Ridge School that is being built on the east side of 53. So thank you.
Thank you, John, very much. I look forward to that. I know these concepts have changed, so thanks for serving on those committees and bringing us back with the information that we need moving forward. So we'll move to item 12, council reports. Does any councilor have a report they'd like to give this evening? Okay, so I have a couple of things I'd like to bring up before we adjourn. First of all, I don't think if there was a formal announcement, but, and you saw the big article in the newspaper that the Chisholm Public Safety Building got $3.5 million from the federal government. And I don't know if any of you have fielded some calls, but I field a lot of calls. How come we didn't get any money from the, what are we doing? How come we didn't apply for the grant? So everybody calm down, relax. The announcement is being given right now tonight at the council meeting live that we did receive $3 million from the federal government. Thank you to Congressman Stauber, Senator Klobuchar, and Senator Smith for working hard to get us $3 million. Now, we decided not to put all our eggs in one basket. We need street improvements and repairs, and we heard you. So one of our priorities for the federal government at that time was to put in a request for what we could get for some road and street improvements for part of our street improvement project, which is carries us through almost 2025. And Councilor Baraboo, the street and alley chair, Britt, and all of us are excited about making sure we make these improvements, and you've seen some moving forward. So we're working very hard to get that done, so that $3 million is really going to be an asset as we move into the next phase of our road and street improvement program. So thank you to our senators and for everybody who worked very hard on that program moving forward. And I had the opportunity to sit in on some Zoom calls about that issue. So thank you, everybody, for all your hard work. And yes, we are receiving some money from the federal government. Not too many people in northern Minnesota or communities that receive this funding. Chisholm and us were two of those. So thank you very much. And then I also had the opportunity to testify at the House of Representatives under House File 4022, and that relates to the request for the exemption for the net debt limit under the Minnesota statute. As you know, it's 3 times what our property value is, what our debt limit is, and the state sits at $11 million, and really we're at like $11,478,099. Well, we have some debt levy out there in about $405,000, but we want a loan from the USDA for $17.1 million to help us get over the hump and move forward with our new public safety building. And in order to do that, the United States Department of Agriculture requires that we have a bond. In order to get that bond, we have to have a levy. And so, and we're going to levy that bond, but we are over our debt limit. If it will actually be charged against our debt limit, and we've asked the legislature to excuse that. We're asking them not to. It doesn't cost the state any money, just to give us the authority to be exempted from our debt limit and move that $17.1 million off that's charged against our debt limit, so we can continue to operate as we normally do. And so the long-term effect is to make sure that we get that done. So I did testify at House File, Representative Liz Lagarde was the author of the bill. I'll be testifying at the Senate hearing with Senator Tom Bach. He is the author of the bill, so I'll be going back down the legislature and testifying at that sometime in the next couple of weeks. So just to give everybody a heads up, we're moving forward at that. And all the hard work from the council with respect to this, I think it's really a testament to the Friends of Public Safety and our community who really supported, the construction of this big facility. The question is, why do we use that for roads and streets? Because we weren't getting any bonding money for roads and streets, and we wouldn't get a loan from the USDA for roads and streets. So this is for a public safety building. So moving forward, so thank everybody for your hard work, and I will keep you posted as this progresses further. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, you did it the smart way because streets and roads are exempt from the upper limits, so you did it the smart way.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was appropriate to do so. Thank you to our consultants that went ahead and did that. So when one of the arguments for extending the debt limit, there was one question by one of the House of Representatives that, well, this has never been done before. Why haven't we done this before? And so I explained to him, Virginia is a very unique community. You're looking at funding roads and streets, infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure. We have mandated all our community to convert from steam to gas. That creates a big void in our steam and water systems underneath our roadways. We couldn't fix those because of the extreme disrepair and the collapse of the vaults in the water and the sewer lines moving forward. And now that we've mandated all that, this is the time for us to move forward with our projects for the future. Our roads and streets are horrendous, just like are in many other communities. And so that was the argument that tipped the scales, I think, that we were unique in that regard, that we did this, mandated our public and the citizens of Virginia taxpayers have suffered significantly and have a financial investment as we're moving forward. So that was one of the things that was highlighted at that testimony. So thank you very much, everybody. All right, so anything else to come before the council this evening? Seeing and hearing none, we will adjourn to our next council meeting, which is scheduled for Tuesday, April 12, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. here in the council chambers. Have a good night, everybody. Be safe. Hopefully, we won't get a big storm. We stand adjourned.